homeowners insurance and all those other kinds of things.
Everything.
How to navigate the whole program. And right now we're working on getting that course translated in Spanish, and it should be available really soon. We're very excited about that, and so.
That's awesome. So that will be available online for anyone
Right.
to take.
Right. There is a fee to it, because we are certified by HUD and by USDA Rural Housing Development. Then we have quite a bit of paperwork that has to be taken care of for that certification to happen, and so that's one of the things that we do. So, yes, but it's up and running, and so you can get to it by just typing in extension.usu.edu and /HBE and
HBE for Home
Buyer
Buyer
Education,
Education.
and then
Awesome.
you can find it there.
That's so awesome. We're super excited, and we'll be sure and let you all know as soon as that course is live and ready to go.
Right. So the English one is up and live, but the Spanish one isn't quite up yet.
Okay, and we'll post a link to that, the current course that's
Right.
available
Right.
in the comments, so you can take that if you're interested. So there's snow in Salt Lake today. If you're tuned in, let us know where you're watching from and if you got snow today. I'm just looking out our window and the streets are clear, but it is snowy. But despite the snow, it is officially spring.
It is.
We had our first day of spring last week,
Mhm.
and I have started noticing some for sale signs going up in my neighborhood.
I have too.
It is
There are a lot of homes going up for sale right now.
And then that seems to be
spring is the time.
Yeah, people usually, because no one wants to move in the winter.
Yeah, it's so wet and cold and
And you have
icky.
to make sure your furniture's covered so it doesn't get wet, and it's just more of a hassle. So, people are starting to think about buying new homes, maybe they're first-time home buyers, or if they're existing homeowners, maybe thinking about selling their homes and buying a different home. So I invited Marilyn to come and share some tips with us all about what you need to do, what you need to know as you're getting ready to sell your home or buy a new home. Oh, but we've got some people. Let's see. Shelby says she's watching from Salt Lake and it's very snowy. Yeah, we've had power outages, all kinds of. There's your emergency preparedness.
That's right.
And Aubrey's in Logan. No snow. That's crazy. You think Logan would get all this
Right,
snow?
I would have thought they would have gotten snow too.
Anyway, so
All right.
Marilyn, let's talk first about people who are buying homes, and this could be first-time home buyers or people who are looking
To buy a second home.
Yeah.
Or
a different
a
home.
different home.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So there's several things that you just really need to think about. The first thing is, what is your financial readiness? Have you looked at your employment? Is your employment in such a position that it's going to be stable and reliable? Because a lender's going to really want to know if you're going to qualify for that loan. And so that's a really important thing, and so that you can take care of those aspects by looking at that. The second thing you need to look at is what kind of money have you got saved for the down payment, for the closing costs, for the earnest money, for the inspection, for the
Right.
insurance.
Let's
those
dive
kinds
into
of
that. Let's dive into that one a little bit, because I know that there's something with down payments. If you don't have enough of a down payment, it can incur more costs later on. Like the term I've heard is mortgage insurance.
Oh, well, if you can't put down 20% of the cost of the home, then usually you have mortgage insurance. And mortgage insurance is not insuring you, it's actually insuring the lender. So the lender wants to know that you're going to be good for that loan. And if you do not have the money to pay for that loan, then they're in trouble, because they have taken money that investors have given them
Giving it to you.
Right, exactly. Right. So they have to pay their bills just like you and I have to pay ours. So they want to know that you're a good risk. So they have mortgage insurance in case you default on that loan until you have 20% equity in the property. Now, if you get an FHA loan, though, the mortgage insurance can continue throughout the life of the loan. So a lot of people, if they do get an FHA loan and they're in a better situations financially in a few years, they may go back and refinance that loan so that they don't have that mortgage insurance on it. But if you get a conventional loan, a lot of the conventional loans are working around that. They may have two loans, one that covers the 20%, the other that covers 80%, or there's a variety of things like that.
So as you're assessing your finances and looking at how much money you have saved, you're probably already looking at houses because that's the fun part.
Yeah.
That's important to think about is do you have 20%? And if you don't, be aware of it, that
Right.
mortgage insurance will be something you'll have to pay.
Right, and one of the other things to think about is that if you're more limited in your income, there are housing programs that provide grants or low interest loans or things like that. If you live in a rural area, you may qualify for a USDA Rural Development Loan, and that's a lower interest loan, and they have some really nice features with that. But there's a lot of different housing agencies that do provide some funding, and some lenders do. Some lenders have grants that they can provide, some of them up to $10,000, which is really wonderful.
Yeah.
But you've got to check around, and so you need to ask your lender, contact different lenders and ask them if they have any kind of home buyer assistance in their mortgage department for grants for that type of thing. And also local agencies. Here in Salt Lake, Community Development Corporation manages a lot of the grant programs for many of the different cities. So if you can check with them and see if they manage the money for the city that you're thinking of moving into, and if they don't, then maybe you can contact the cities directly. So there's some monies like that can be available.
So, and that's something I had never even thought of. You just think, well, you pay for your house, that's
Right.
not something that I think a lot of people know about. So it's great to know about that and to be able to inquire with your lender.
Right. So that is an important thing. Something else to think about too is that sometimes you can get the seller to pay the closing costs, which can be 2 to 3% of the cost of the home. So to have that paid by somebody else is really nice in the sense that the closing costs are not considered part of the equity or the value of that property. So
It's just the cost of the transaction.
right.
So tell us, what are closing costs?
Okay, so closing costs include like the application fees, the kinds of things that the lender would need to collect. So, and then it will include things like expenses for the title search and the title insurance and the registering it at the county, registering the deed at the county. It includes things like the credit report and the appraisal and
Okay.
those kinds of things, the origination fees. And different lenders will have some different types of fees. Sometimes there's specific taxes that have to be paid. It also could include your down payment or other kinds of costs that maybe are there. For a seller, they may have some things that need to be repaired or whatever, and they may be escrowing some money that will be paid out in their closing costs that will then be transferred to the buyer, or some things like that.
But my parents are actually going through this process right now. I think they close in a week on the sale of their house, and so they had to replace their roof, and I think they did it directly, but that could be your closing cost is you provide that money to the buyer
right.
for them to do
Right.
the replacement or repair.
Right, and that's one of the other things to think about when you start looking for a home, is that you need to make sure you have a home inspection.
Yeah.
Because then you find out what are the problems with the property, and it also gives you a chance to have a sense of, all right, what are things I need to pay attention to in this home, and where are different things in the home? Okay, how do I turn off the water, and how do I turn off the electricity and the gas, and how does the sprinkler system work, and all those other kinds of things. So that's important, but it also gives you a sense of, is this house worth what it's been advertised as?
Right.
And if it's not, then you may want to walk away. Or if there's a problem with the foundation or the roof and it's too massive of a problem, some lenders will not loan to you.
Right, until those are fixed.
Right. So that's something to be aware of.
Okay, we do have a couple questions. Fernando says, hello, hi, thanks for watching. And Shelby has a question. She says, how much should we plan to save for closing costs, and how do we get the lender to pay those?
Oh, the lender will never pay those. You want to get the seller to pay those,
So
but
that
the
would be,
lender is not going to ever cover that.
would you have
cost.
to include that in your offer? Like, we're
Yes.
offering this much
Yes.
and sellers to pay closing costs?
Yes, you would need to communicate that that is what you want to the seller. And a lot of times, if the sellers are anxious to sell, that's one of the
They'll do it.
one of the contingencies. But you can put that contingency in your offer and say, you know, that you want them to pay it, and if they agree to that, that makes, you know, that's a great thing.
So what are average closing
Oh,
costs?
2 to 3% of the cost of the home.
Okay.
If it's
So it
a lot
depends.
higher than that, you want to start asking, okay, what are these fees for? And one of the things with an FHA loan, the closing costs may be a bit higher because they're collecting a premium on the mortgage insurance or some other things like that. So you need the lender to explain exactly what are those fees, and when you'll get a document at the very beginning of your loan that will tell you all the estimated fees that will be charged at closing, and then you get a closing document, and it should be very close to that. And if it's not, you need to really be questioning why, if you don't know why, if it hasn't been discussed with you, why that has changed. Sometimes there's situations where there has to be a second appraisal or something like that. And if that happens, then there may be some extra fees. But that's something that you want to know about ahead of time.
Right. So what would be a red flag when you're finding out what the fees are for? What would be a red flag in that you
Well,
want to say, wait a minute?
They just seem to have all these other kinds of fees. And so what I would say is, I want you to explain all these different fees. If it's something that, and maybe you've gone to a couple of lenders and gotten an estimate of how much the cost would be for a specific loan, and you're trying to compare a couple of different lenders, then you can take a look and say, okay, if their closing costs are 3 or 4%, and the other one's, 2%, you want to know why, what the difference is, and what, have them explain it to you as to why those fees are necessary, and say, are there any of these that can be waived or can be done away with?
Okay. And I know one of your tips is to know who you're working with and know the people you're working with. And, we bought our first home. It's been, almost 5 years.
Mhm.
And it didn't even cross my mind to shop around for lenders.
Oh.
We had an agent that we trusted that was recommended to us, and she had she recommended who we should use for different things, and we just trusted that and didn't even think about shopping around. So tell us about that.
It's important to shop around for your realtor, I think, and your lender. Both of those, you have the right to find someone that you feel comfortable with. And that's one of the things that oftentimes people don't realize, is that if you start out with somebody, like let's say a realtor, and you're not happy with their service, or you just don't click as far as personality, it's okay. Go find someone else that you feel more comfortable with. We suggest that you research 3.
Yeah.
Contact 3 and just go visit with them and say, okay, tell me what it is you do, and how do you shop, how do you find the homes that you're going to show me, or the lender, tell me about, what kinds of loans can you offer me, and what are the interest rates going right now. One of the things when you go to visit with a lender, you want to try to visit the lenders on the same day, because the interest rates change daily, and so sometimes you think, oh, I've got a great deal with this lender, and then the next day you go to somebody else and they have a better deal, but you don't know that first lender didn't have that same better deal the next day
because
too.
Of the day. Okay.
Right, so
That's
it's good to
interesting.
compare that way. But you want to make sure that you're also comparing the same types of loans, so that you want to find out about all the types of loans that they can offer you, what kind of interest rate that they would offer you, and then oftentimes you can lock in the interest rate when you're visiting with a lender before you even go shopping. And you need to actually have figured out what you can afford.
Before you're looking
Before
at
you-
houses.
It's
That's-
so disappointing to
I
go
know.
look at this beautiful house and it's $200,000 more than you can afford.
Right. You're just setting yourself up for heartbreak.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I don't want to give away everything that's in your course. We want to leave a little something to be wanted. So do you talk about different types of loans in
Yes.
your
Yes. We talk
So-
about different types of loans, and we even talk about some that we don't recommend, like interest-only loans. You want to be cautious if, especially as a first-time home buyer, if you're hoping that your income is going to increase. Oftentimes, people will try to get into an adjustable rate mortgage, and that can be a really great thing if you're only planning on staying maybe in the area for a couple of years, and then you might be moving somewhere else. Then it's great. You get that a situation where you can't refinance the loan without penalty unless they're at certain times. It might be when it adjusts, you can then refinance to a fixed loan. But the thing that you have to be careful of is you've got to be prepared. A lot of the people who got into the real problems years ago were people who didn't really pay attention to those adjustable rate mortgages, and then when the mortgage situation, the whole market kind of tanked.
Right.
Well, then they wanted to go in and refinance their loans because they lost their jobs, or their jobs hadn't increased in payment. Their income hadn't gone up, and now they couldn't make the bigger payment.
Right.
And they couldn't refinance because there were so many people trying to refinance, and
Because of their loan type.
right, and they lost their home. So you want to be really cautious about that.
Okay. Shelby has another question. She says, considering the housing market right now, would it be smart to wait for some type of bubble burst?
I think you have to be really careful because you don't know when that's really going to happen. The one thing that's nice right now is that the interest rates have dropped a little bit, and so that's a really positive thing. I don't know. I certainly couldn't tell you when
That's
when the market is going to drop, when the value of homes are going to drop. So
yeah, that's more speculative than
right.
than we
So I
can
can't
really
get into
do.
it. I wish I could, but
I wish we could know, but you
Right.
just don't know.
I know that the housing prices have gone up, and it's really a sell up, and it's really a seller's market right now. It's not a seller's market right now. It's not a buyer's market, so, in a sense, because there are so many people looking, and the inventory is much lower than it should be.
But you can still make
Inventory is much lower than it should be.
But you can still make wise decisions.
Yes.
And wise decisions.
Yes.
And know what you can afford and not take out a loan for more than you can.
Right.
more than you
And
can
that's one of
afford.
the things you want to really be careful of, is you want to make sure that you're not setting yourself up for failure in a way. So make sure that you're not looking at your housing cost to be more than about 30% of your income, of your gross income. If you're banking on being able to get into a home where you're going to pay 35 or 40% of your income, that's really scary because you have a lot of other expenses in a household, and it could be really, really dangerous for you. So be really cautious about that, and also be cautious about the other kind of debt that you might have, because all of that will add up, and your debt to income ratio will be figured in when you're trying to qualify for that loan. And if you have too much debt in other areas, then it's going to limit your ability to buy a home.
Right. You shared a good tip with me that I'm going to have you share. This was a while ago, and we were talking about making big purchases like appliances. And you shared something with me about how that can affect your credit. Will you share that with our viewers?
Yes.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think so.
Okay.
So, a lot of times if you're buying a big appliances, is it the one where they put it on?
It shows up on your credit.
Oh, yes. Well, it will show up on your credit. So, for example, if you're just ready to buy a home, don't go out and buy any kind of large purchase. Don't do a lot of activity on your credit card. Don't buy a house. Don't buy. We're trying to buy a house. Don't buy a car. I have a niece and her husband who just recently moved, and they were buying their first home, and they just finished college, so they're poor, and they were trying to buy a bed, but they didn't want to buy it till they got there because they didn't want to have to transport it over 3 states to get there.
Right.
And so they had a little bit of a hang up with getting the loan through when they thought they were going to go close. And so they said something to the lender, well, do we dare go buy this bed? And she said, don't do anything until you have signed on the dotted line. You cannot buy a bed, you can't buy anything. Don't do anything on your credit cards or anything.
Because that will affect your score.
It'll affect your score. And so they had to wait. several days until it finally closed, and then they were able to buy their bed.
Oh my
But
goodness.
luckily they were staying with some friends, so it wasn't like they were sleeping on the floor. But
Right, but that's
that's
not
something
something
to
you
be-
think about, that like even if you plan to pay off that purchase, or
Right.
it's not an unwise purchase, but it will show up on your
Because it becomes a
score.
new line, like, let's say you bought some furniture, it establishes a new line of credit, especially if you took the loan out in the store where you were buying the furniture. That's a new line of credit, and that will drop your score.
Like
because
if the
it's-
store finances it at 0%, it
Even.
still shows up on your
Right,
credit score.
right, and so it's a hit. So, and some people think, oh, well, I could pay off my car, or I could pay off this big purchase that I've been paying regularly. I've been paying on-time payments for the whole time, and but I just want to get rid of it. Well, that could be a problem because maybe you've got a closed-ended form of credit, like an auto loan, or maybe it's even a furniture loan, and you're not putting anything else on that loan. But as soon as you pay that off, that credit line goes away, and it drops your score.
Oh, because you were building up good credit by paying
Paying
on time.
and now you've taken that away, and it will show that you paid it off, and you had on-time payments in the past. But it's more valuable as an open
That's really
line than
interesting.
a closed one.
So interesting. Let's answer a few questions.
Okay.
Aubrey says, I'm not anywhere close to being ready to buy my own house, but is there anything I should be doing now to prepare for when I am looking for my first house?
Yes. First thing is make sure that you're paying attention to your finances. That's really important. Have a
Credit.
budget.
Your credit score.
Have a budget. Make sure, yes, get your credit report every year and check and see what's on it. Make sure that all your payments are on time, and don't go opening lots of forms of credit. Store credit cards are notorious. They encourage you to open one today because you're going to get 20% off. But that's a new line of credit, and the lines of credit that are the most valuable are those that you've had for 2 or 3 years. So let's say that you have a credit card and you don't use it much, and so you kind of just put it away and you're using it for emergencies only. Make sure that you use that line of credit, at least if it's like a credit card, use it at least once a year. You can make any kind of a small purchase and pay it right off, but you want to keep that active. Otherwise, that creditor may decide to close that credit card line of credit. And to lose a line of credit, as I mentioned just a minute ago, it affects your credit score. So you want to have those good forms of credit that have been open, that they felt like you were reliable, and so they've allowed them to be open. And so that's something to think about.
Okay.
And so you want to be careful with that. But opening a whole bunch of them at once is not a good thing. And maybe you say, well, I have a whole bunch, now what do I do? Don't close them all, because every one that you close is going to affect your credit. So if you feel like over time you want to close some, then close them gradually. But
Right.
be cautious about making a lot of changes
I've got
right
one.
around the time you're going to buy.
I need your advice, Marilyn. I have one credit card that I it's like a hotel points one that I like having those
Points,
benefits.
yes.
But I don't use it as my main card, so my gym membership. I have my gym membership charged there once a month. So it's a small amount, but it's charging regularly, and I'm paying it off regularly.
Great.
Is that
Oh, it's great. And a
reasonable
lot
line?
of people think that you have to carry a balance in order for you to build a good line of credit, and that is not true. If you have a credit card, and let's say that you use it regularly every month, and you pay it off in its entirety every month, never pay any interest, that's great. It is still a good established line of credit, and that's a good thing. So that's not a negative. But if you set it aside and you're not using it, then you want to use it at least once a year, just so that it keeps it active.
right? And that might not be wise anyway, because most credit cards charge annual fees, so you're getting charged this fee.
Well, and the ideal thing is that you should have credit cards that don't charge you an annual fee.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that you have to look at. Sometimes you have an annual fee with some of the credit cards if they're giving you points back or other things like that. So take a look and find out if the amount that you're getting back well warrants the fee.
Right.
So that would be something to be just concerned about that.
Yeah.
So credit, also, just making sure that your employment is good. Starting a savings account. A lot of people just don't have any kind of savings, and you really need to get in the habit of having a savings philosophy and a plan.
For
And
that down payment.
yes, for the down payment, you're going to have to come up with at least $1,000 for earnest money. You're going to have to pay for an appraisal. You're going to have to pay for an inspection, which can be $300 or $400. The appraisal will be $300 or $400. Those are fees that you're going to have to come up with besides whatever you're going to pay as a down payment on the house. And so those are fees that you need to be planning for now. Also, anticipate utility bills and things like that will increase. So you'll have fees that you will have as a homeowner that you didn't have now. And so you need to be anticipating those kinds of things. But if you've got any problems with your credit, get those cleaned up. If you've had some late fees or you have some things that aren't paid off, get your credit in good shape so that you're not being delinquent on any bills or anything like that. That would be really, really important as you prepare.
Here's another question. Shelby says, do they look at credit history as much as your credit score? My husband and I both have really good credit, but we're both pretty young, so we don't have a lot of history.
Okay. Well, your credit history is basically your credit score.
So if it's good now, then you're okay.
So if you're working to build a good credit history just by your activity, that's a great thing. A lot of times if you're young, you're not going to have an extensive history. But if you have some forms of credit, then that helps. That's better than having no credit. If you don't have a credit card, you probably need to have one in order to start establishing some kind of credit. Maybe, I don't know if you've made any purchases that might, like a store purchase or something like that, that might have given you some credit score. But the thing to do is get your credit report and see what's listed on there, what is being reported. A lot of times we think, oh, I made this purchase here, but I paid it off. And if you paid it off within the first 3 or 4 months of when you made the purchase, it may not have ever been reported to the credit reporting agency, so it won't have counted on your credit score. So that's why it's important for you to take a look at your credit history, your credit report. You can do that every year, and look and see what's being reported there. And that will give you an idea of, okay, these are the lines of credit that are reporting. And then you can work, if you don't have a credit card or something like that, that might be something that you could start using. You could get a general purpose one like a Visa or a MasterCard, and then you could start building up by using it and then paying it off every month. So you don't have any kind of balance, you're not being charged interest, but that's starting to build some history for yourself. We recommend, or the people in the industry recommend, that you don't have more than about 25 to 30%. Let's say you had a credit card and the limit was $1,000. You wouldn't want to have more than $200 or $300 charged on that credit card. That's carried over, because anything above that, then your debt to limit adds in your credit score. And so they're going to look at somebody who keeps their limits low on those cards, and they see that as a really positive thing. If they see you having a credit card and you're maxed out, so you've spent $999 of the $1,000 that
and you're
are
not
allowed,
paying it
and
off.
it's not getting paid off, you're just making a minimum payment, that's not as positive on your credit score as
Okay.
would be if you're keeping those limits low.
Right. So Shelby clarified she meant the length of history. So as long as your credit score is good.
Right. That's the beginning. And sometimes if you're, like you say, you're young, so you don't have 5 or 6 years to have had credit. Well, one of the things that they will do is, if you've been paying rent, or you have some other forms of, maybe you've paid utility bills or other things like that, the lenders can oftentimes go and collect that non-traditional history and say, okay, they'll contact your landlord. Have you paid your rent in the last 2 years on time every month? They may contact the utility company. Have you paid your utilities on time? Even maybe a cell phone carrier. Have you paid on your cell phone every month in a timely way? Anything like that they can collect that shows that you are a responsible individual and you pay your bills.
Okay.
That will help.
Okay. So let's kind of shift gears a little bit and let's talk about those of us who are getting ready to sell. So we've decided we want to sell. What do we need to be thinking about? Is there a financial side to selling that we need to be
Yes.
aware of?
Because if you're going to work with a realtor, you as a seller are the person who pays the realtor. And that, the way it works is that you go to a realtor, you hire them to come and put your house on the market, and then they will send out to the MLS, and they'll advertise to other realtors saying, have you got a buyer for me? And so let's say this other realtor comes and says, I have a buyer that is interested in your property. Then you say, if you're the realtor, okay, I'm willing to split my commission with you if you will bring this buyer to me. And so that's, in a sense, a negotiation that they've made. And so you as a seller then pay all of the realtors. You pay, like, if the realtor agreed to do it for 6% of the cost of the home, or the sale price of the home, then 3% of that would go to the other realtor and their broker. If they bring a buyer to you that you settle on. So you have to know that as a seller. You're also going to have to pay some closing costs, and then any kind of other fees. You're going to have to pay for title insurance and title and the title search to prove that the title on your property is clean. So there's nobody can put a lien against it. You know, it's not like you had a furnace put in and you didn't pay the bill, and now there's a lien on your property because the furnace wasn't paid for, and you can't sell that home until that lien is taken off. So those kinds of searches are done to make sure that that property is available to be sold.
Right. Anything else sellers need to be aware
Okay.
of?
So yes, if you want to sell this property, the one thing that you need to be aware is what kind of condition is your house in. If you have got a lot of problems with the house and that's why you're selling, you want to do at least as much minor repair work as possible. Now, you mentioned that your parents just are selling their home, and they decided to fix the roof because they knew that it probably wouldn't sell, or if somebody couldn't finance their loan without a roof that was in good condition. So anything that you can find that you can fix without a lot of expense is well worth the time, because that will help that property sell better. And a lot of times it's just simple little fixes. One of the ideas is, if you're not going to have the money to professionally stage your home,
Which not many people do.
there's some things you need to do. Declutter. Get rid of everything out of your home that you can get rid of, that you don't need for daily living.
Right, and we just went through this with my mom, and I just kept saying to her, you know, have you ever been to the Parade of Homes?
Mm-hmm.
And you go through these houses, and they are beautiful, and obviously they don't look like anyone lives there because there's not a dirty sock to be found in the whole house. You know, like, you want your home to look as much as a display home as you can, and obviously most people still have to live in their homes while they're
Right.
showing them, but that clutter and maybe things that you love, people don't want to see when they're coming to see your house.
Right. So that's one of the things is declutter. They say you need to remove at least a third of what's in your house so that it looks spacious. The more furnishings that you have in a home, the less space it appears to have. So make it look a little bit more sparsely decorated even. Will give it a sense of more space. The other thing that you want to be aware of is to make sure that it's really light. So you can buy the lightest, brightest light bulbs that you can put in the light fixtures, and when they come to look at the home, turn the lights on, because it makes it look light and bright and
More appealing.
more appealing.
Yeah.
Also, you want to, when you're decluttering, you want to take down everything that identifies you in the home, like pictures and things like that. You want to take those things out of your home, because somebody wants to imagine themselves in that house, and if they see your pictures and your memorabilia, it's your house. It's not, oh, this could be mine.
Right.
And
You
so
know,
you want to take those things away, but still give it so it's attractive.
Decorated.
Right.
So I asked my parents' realtor about that while they were showing their house, and I said, should we be taking pictures off the wall? And she said, if it's going to leave a hole in the wall, don't take it down. And I thought that was good advice. Like, maybe people would rather see a picture of your family than a hole in the wall.
Or else repair the hole in the wall.
Or fill the hole in the wall.
Right. And so that's one of the things to think about. What are the things you can do to, you know, like touch up the paint? If you're not going to paint, you know, sometimes people go in and paint their homes because the paint is in really bad condition. But if you're not going to paint, then touch up the paint. Make sure that it looks really good. And then make sure, you know, like, cleaning and doorknobs and doors, like your front door should be, picturesque.
Right.
And if the kick plate should be really nice and shiny and clean and look as good as it possibly can. You might replace some light fixtures if they really don't look attractive. Because that's not a real big expense, but it can make a big difference. Replace the shower curtain with a new one that looks
Right.
nice and fresh. Put up clean and brand new towels in the bathroom.
And I heard white towels sell better.
And I'm not-
Bathrooms with white towels are supposedly better.
Okay, so some other things like that you can think about is you may even replace the faucets, in the kitchen or the bathroom if it'll give a better look to the bathroom or the kitchen. Because again, they're not real expensive, but it does make a difference if it looks new. If you are really serious about getting top dollar, you might even look at replacing appliances, but that does get expensive.
Yeah.
So that might be something that you may not want to do, but certainly make sure that everything is clean and that your counters and everything are spotless. And
Yeah.
then you need to check outside too.
Yes, which is hard this time of year
Yeah.
when things aren't very green, but there are little things you can do to clean up and make it look
Right.
nice.
Well, and certainly looking to your outside trim, does it need to be painted? Because that'll make a big difference. And making sure that, your railings and your walkways are really clean and your flower beds, when the snow goes away, we're planning on that.
Front doors.
Yes, so front doors, you may want to paint that, or if not, make sure it's really, really clean, so that it really is very inviting. Sometimes even having some sort of flowers or plants close to the doorway area,
Right. Wreath on the door.
something that invites you in. And, but take a look, if it's the temperature so that you can do this, you might want to power wash your house. But one of the things to be careful about that, this is just a little tip, is that you don't want to power wash from the bottom up, but you really want to power wash shooting from the top down, because you can get water underneath your siding and it can ruin the siding. So make sure that you shoot from
So stand on the roof and
well,
wash, or a ladder,
or shoot it from up instead of down, so that can protect that. That's just a little thought.
All
Making
right.
sure windows are clean.
Yeah, just those little details.
Right.
We have a question from Emma. She says, "I'm curious what your thoughts are on using your home while you're selling it." So living in your home.
Most of us are not going to have the option of being like the people on TV that move out of their house while they sell their house.
Right.
So,
Because that works with the timing of your mortgage, right?
Right.
Like you have to,
right.
the purchase of your new home is contingent on the sale of your old
Right.
home. And,
Right. So the point being is that if you've decluttered and you've done some real thorough cleaning, and I really mean thorough cleaning, they're going to come in and they're going to pick up your rugs and they're going to take a look at what's underneath. They're going to look at the corners and crevices. So make sure that you've dusted and that you've gotten those cobwebs away.
they'll probably open cupboards.
Yes. So straighten up your cupboards and get as much out of your cupboards as you can. Anything that you don't absolutely have to have in there. Even, like you have a drawer with all your utensils that you use for cooking. You know what? Maybe you've got 2 or 3 spatulas and, take everything but 1 or 2 out. Just put the basics in there so it looks like the drawers are spacious and there's a lot of room in them. And try to have them look nice and clean. Even if you have silverware in the drawers or, whatever, make it look clean and minimalize it as much as possible.
One thing I think with that is, like when we were looking at houses, in any kitchen where I saw a hanging pot rack, it made me think this kitchen does not have enough storage. So I think if you have your things really well organized, then it gives people that idea that there's plenty of space for all the things that you would need. But if it's really stuff spilling out of cupboards or whatever.
Well, I'll give an example.
I'll give you
Years
that
and years
idea.
ago, when I was single, I was looking for a house before I had married my husband. And I was just excited, and I went with this realtor, and he, I was just a poor single person. I didn't have a lot of money. And so I just couldn't believe the homes I was seeing, and I could not believe the homes I went into that were unkempt. They weren't clean, and things were not put away, and just a lot of clutter everywhere. And I just cringed when I left there. I thought, is this what I can afford? And maybe the bones of the house were fine, but I couldn't see them for all that was in them. And so I didn't end up buying at that time. I literally walked away and didn't buy for a long time after that, because I thought, I don't want this kind of home. So it really does make a big difference, but you have to live in a home. But if you have a policy of, okay, when will you allow people to come and see the home, set it, try to have a rule with your realtor that they're scheduled appointments, not just somebody walking through when you don't know that they're
Right.
coming, kind of thing. And then, having everybody in the family kind of buy into the process, so that every morning when you get up, you put things away, make sure things are orderly. When you leave, wipe off the counters, wipe out the sink,
Yeah.
wipe off the mirror, just in case somebody comes before you get a chance to really tidy up again. Then you won't be embarrassed. I was at a woman's house just last night, and she's just getting ready to put up her house for sale, and she said that she bought a new bedspread and everything, and she was, she'd made her bed really nice the day before, and then the realtor couldn't come that day. She was going to come and take pictures. And then the next day they'd run off in a hurry to go take their grandson to dinner,
And the realtor came.
and because of something they hadn't really made the bed, and so then she comes and she wants to take pictures, and so they just hurried and pulled the bedspread up over the bed really fast, and it was kind of wrinkly and and she
cute.
felt so bad because she'd done such a nice job the day before. So be warned that you never can really plan.
Yeah,
So
be prepared.
just try to do the best you can.
Okay, so it looks like I misread Emma's question. We are looking at like little tiny font on our comments. She was actually wondering about this website called Homey. Have you heard of Homey?
I have heard about it, but I don't know a lot about it.
And I just heard a little bit about it too. One of our coworkers here has a family member that used Homey to sell her home, so it doesn't use a real estate agent, so you can list your home there.
And then you
And I'm sure you pay
And
some
you-
fee to the website when you sell.
and you
but-
upload the pictures and everything. Let me just caution you one thing about pictures. I mentioned the niece and her husband who bought a home, and they were buying from long distance from Utah, and they were moving to Texas. And one of the sad things is when they got there, the pictures were not descriptive of the home and the condition it was in. It did not look the same. Like, there were problems with the blinds, and there were other kinds of things, and those did not show up in the pictures. And so they assumed that it was in this condition when they purchased it, but when they got into the home, the blinds were a problem, and there were other things that were problems, that even though the pictures were of those areas, you couldn't tell that there was a problem, and so it was very deceptive, and they were very disappointed, because then they had to go in and do a lot of work that they hadn't anticipated, and they hadn't planned for, because,
budgeted for.
yes, so that's one of the things to be careful, and that's one of the reasons why an inspection is really important too, so.
Right, and you could still go through those same processes with Homey. You could still have an
Right.
inspection and
Right,
an appraisal.
right. But just make sure that if you are listing your home, that it is really in the condition, the pictures are descriptive of the condition the home is really in, and have it be in that kind of
Right,
condition.
and you want to be honest in your
Right.
disclosures and things like that, because that can lead to problems later on if you didn't disclose something that was a problem and the buyer discovers it later. That's a problem.
Well, and the other thing is that if when they actually get to see the home, then they can deny, or they can cancel the purchase based on what they find in the inspection.
Yeah.
And so you wanna be able to sell it for top dollar, and you want it to be a good experience for everyone involved. And, so I think that's really an important thing.
Those are such great tips, Marilyn. Thank you so much for sharing those with us. And will you tell us again where to find your online home buyer education
I will.
course?
It's at Extension, just spell the word extension.usu.edu/HBE, and it's the online home buyer education course.
And there is a link in the comments. If you missed that, you can scroll up and see the link to that course. Who should be taking this course?
Anyone who's buying a home, especially for the first time, but if it's been a while since you bought one, it's a good thing to go through. It is a certified course. You do receive a certificate of completion upon completing the course, and so it is fairly lengthy. But for those people who are going through homebuyer grant programs or for USDA rural housing or others, a lot of lenders are now requiring this for qualification for their loans. And so it's a HUD certified course. And so one of the things that's nice is we do charge $60 for the first person in the household. But if it's you and a spouse or a partner, the second person can register with a special code that you get after the first one's registered for just an additional $5. So
you could both be certified.
Right, because a lot of times you're both required to be on the loan
Okay.
application if both of your incomes are being considered on the loan.
Okay. Great advice. I hope you'll all check out that online course. Marilyn has spent a lot of time making sure that it's just top notch and a really good one for you. So anywhere else they can learn about homebuyer education from USU Extension?
We have a few other things on the website that you can go in and look at on that website.
That same website.
Mm-hmm. But one of the last things I just wanted to mention about this, I was thinking about this, is, let's say that you're the seller and you really want to get an idea of what do I need to fix up in my house. Invite a neighbor or a friend to go and look at your house from the street and tell you everything that they see that they don't like or they think looks a little unkempt or anything like that, and then let them go through your house with you. And you have to really trust them. You have to be a pretty good friend to let them go through your whole house, because it's kind of invasive.
Yeah, you don't want to take it too personally. They're trying to help you.
But they will tell you from an objective point of view, whoa, if I were buying this house, this is what I would see as a red flag, or this or whatever.
You've got to change that, or flip this way.
Right. Their impressions. Oh, and also if you've got things that are really bold or really, really unique or really different that you're displaying in your home, those are some of the things that you might want to kind of remove, because they might be detracting from the overall look of the house from the point of view of a potential buyer.
I have a funny story about that. So, my parents did something similar. It actually was their real estate agent that arranged to have other agents come and walk through the house and leave like comment cards. So they had all different opinions about different things, and one thing they had in their house, they had these masks that my dad brought back from Africa. These like tribal masks. They're really like an art piece. They're beautiful. And there were conflicting things. So one agent said, you need to take down the masks. People will think that's offensive. And another agent said, those won't be offensive. They're fine. Like differing opinions on these masks that I grew up with in our house my whole life. And it's just funny.
So did they take it down?
They did not. They left it up and their house still sold.
Oh, that's good. So it just depends. But those are just a few clues that oftentimes will help you be more successful if you feel comfortable taking them down. One of the things I thought was really funny is years ago I was talking to a good friend who bought a home, and she said one of the things she got the house at a really good price, but she said the first thing she did was paint the bathroom because it was black.
Oh, wow.
And that was not very appealing. And for some people, even paint colors can paralyze them. If they feel like, oh, I can never live here because of that, they may not be able to see that white paint on the wall in their mind because they saw the black room.
Right, and
So
some people
you
think,
wanna be careful
just
about that.
paint, but other people will never paint.
Right.
They just want it to be done.
Right.
So. All right, well, let's end on that note. Thank you so much, Marilyn, for sharing your advice with us. I hope you'll all check out that online homebuyer education course. Scroll up in the comments to find that link, and we will see you all again next time.
Have a good afternoon.